Oh yeah, welcome out on a beautiful Friday morning. Thank you guys all for sticking with us for these first few minutes as we get going. We have a new host for our gaming shows today, so that's an exciting way to kick it off with Brycent at the host spot on the panel, and we have an awesome show planned with all sorts of esports talk and gaming talk. But Brycent, I know you've been on the move for the last couple weeks. You were just explaining all that to me. How you been, man? And tell us a bit about where you've been and what to expect for the next coming months for the gaming show with you.
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Man, it's been a run, bro. To be honest, I've been traveling a ton. I think I've hit half of Europe, and then jumped to the West Coast. So I went from Germany to Greece to London, and as soon as I got back from London, out to Miami again, and then Dallas, and then Oregon. So I've been moving around a ton, but it feels good to be on the space and to be hosting. I know Knox going to be coming up here as well and chatting about creator passes, creator league, how we change the future of what this looks like, but overall just having a good conversation about how we move gaming forward in multiple different ways and talking about a couple headlines in video games.
Yeah, when it comes to the Creator League stuff, especially when it comes to gaming, like my biggest focus or question has really been like we've heard all the Web3 side of it, we've heard all the NFT and crypto, et cetera, blockchain side of it, but what about the esports side? Like that's the side that I'm super interested in your guys' take, like yours and Knox and everyone on stage is what do you think is about the actual attempt at trying to redefine esports? Did they actually have something there that's viable? Can it be done? And how do we redefine esports in the right way? Because there is a bad part of that industry that needs to be taken over. I mean, Brycent, what's your experience in the esports side of gaming?
Like I used to be a competitor, like before I even got into Web3, really deep on like the competitive COD scene, then transitioned to competitive Fiasco when I was in college. Um, and across like the different like product lines that I've seen in gaming that have been focused in esports, a lot of the models have been, especially when you look at, I would say like these new franchise models that have happened, like the Call of Duty League and Overwatch, and some of them are doing pretty poorly, and they cost a lot of money. And I would say a big portion as to why that's happening is because these organizations, the games, they don't really have the incentive to make the league better. If you look at like Call of Duty, the majority of their players are not competitive players, and that's like the landscape for most games. It's like the majority does not have the competitive landscape in mind. So you have to think about what the majority of your players who are going to be buying your game are going to be looking to do, and it's a more casual standpoint. So we've seen like really high valuations, but really low dollars being actually put into the different various esports versus like a League of Legends or Counter Strike, where it's very inherent that even if you're playing casual, you're playing in a more competitive skill set or a competitive way. So one thing that I've noticed, in terms of the models that haven't worked, it's a lot of like overvalued plans, a lot of overvalued speculation, but the value of what's being provided to the actual gamers, to the actual crowd of people who are watching, it's just like a very big gap in between. And a lot of what that looks like is like, for example, people making outrageous salaries for playing different games, but not actually having the revenue to see those salaries like be worth what they're actually worth. And a lot of these esports players that make these insane salaries, most of them, if it wasn't for being paid the salary, they wouldn't even make enough money to like be able to sustain themselves as a creator at the very root. So I think esports has like kind of fallen into the trap of, you see these large business models and they're like, oh my god, let's compare it to sports. It's not like traditional sports because you don't have the same brand models, you don't have the same TV licensing models. I can only see LeBron James when he plays basketball on TNT, on Thursday night TNT, or Wednesday when he plays on ESPN. Yeah, more people are going to be watching that versus these creators are streaming, they're playing all the time. So I think there's a lot of different things to unpack here, and I want to throw it over to Hantal because I know he also has a ton of experience in the esports space.
Yeah, so esports was the original Web3. And what I mean by that is everybody raised capital for esports, similar to how they raised capital when Web3 gaming first started. And esports players are basically like your Web3 founders for NFT projects that pay themselves 200K a year or more.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean? What do
Yeah,
you
I think
mean
I
by
lost
that?
you.
Yeah. So basically, my point is like when esports first started, every VC and founder back then thought that esports was going to be the next sports entertainment vertical. And that's why it's called esports, right? Electronic sports. And when they raised a lot of capital, they just started burning hella money to find product market fit. They spent a lot of money on creators, esports players that never made content, and built models that were essentially agencies and like talent agencies. And when you look at Web3, like how crypto first started, everybody started raising capital in the bull market as well. And everybody started spending a lot of capital to try and product market fit. They tried building product and didn't really get much traction, right? Like, as an example, going to this topic in the Creator League, eFuse was actually a social media platform in Web 2 for gamers. And they didn't get enough traction because it was essentially a direct competitor to Twitter. And it's really hard to actually move people to a new platform. So that's why eFuse pivoted from being a social media platform to doing production for Epic Games, Call of Duty League, etc., and doing this Creator League stuff. So, how like esports first started is very similar to how Web3 and crypto gaming started.
I guess my follow up to that would be when you think about where esports currently is in Web 2 versus, I think you can't even talk about it being in Web 3. Like the only real successful like esport that I would say has done decently well, to be honest, was Axie Infinity and doing their esports model to this point. I think Parallel is going to do well as well. But in terms of what we've seen structurally from an esports perspective, what makes the business models of what Web3 can provide super attractive to companies like eFuse that are looking to expand and push gaming in a direction that is value creative and providing value to creators? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, Bryce with the hard hitting questions.
I
Knock also
can dumb
worked
it.
at SOAR.
You know me. I'm just trying to get.
Yeah,
And anytime.
yeah. Knock actually acquired one of the teams I used to work with. But my take on this would be that esports was never a successful model in Web 2. And the reason I think that is because if you look at all these teams, like TSM, I'm not sure if anybody knows this, but they actually made a lot of the Discord bots for Discord. So they're more of a product company than just an esports team. So they've actually found a lot of good product market fit in the products that they developed. But a lot of the other teams that focus purely on esports, like a Cloud9, they've been trying, or Sentinels, let's say, they've been trying to find additional revenue models through Web3. Like Cloud9 came to Axie, that was a terrible activation. A lot of other esports teams like G2 tried to monetize through Web3 and they just didn't work out. And Optic had their own token that went to zero that they never promoted. But when you look at Web3 esports, I think it's not necessarily going to solve the model. And I don't really have an answer to how like crypto will change esports and why it's failing significantly. What I do think it'll solve is a lot of the back end issues of how a lot of organizers or tournaments people never pay out pricing, or like it takes them a year to pay out pricing for shit. And that's the annoying part of esports and competitive.
I appreciate you jumping in.
Isn't one of the things, Bryson, isn't one of the things, like the thing that gets me excited about esports and Web3 is the fact that unlike esports today, where these kids get spotted at a really young age, it's really, really almost impossible to break into. I know Carlos was an ex gamer, would love to hear how you broke into it in the Web2 world. But it's not easy to get into, where Web3 is more democratic, and if you're good, and you make it onto and you build your own team or whatever.
So,
It just seems like that's the big benefit to me.
so to your point there, I think the only reason why Web3 is more democratic and like open to this point is because there's less people And I think if there was like more people, we'd still see some sorts of like pushback and overall just like abrasiveness around how people are discovered. But the openness of blockchain does make the transactions easier. And I think Ansel was hitting on a really important point around how you make esports payouts a lot easier with the blockchain being enabled and being provided. I've done it even with some of my own dead drop tournaments, but I want to get to some of the hands. Let's start with Knock, Miss Team Crypto, then go to Evan, and then go to Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a really important delineation that needs to happen here. There's this idea that any form of competitive gaming is esports, and I would push back on that. If you played in a pickup men's league for soccer or hockey, you wouldn't call it professional sports in the same sense that, you playing in a tournament with four of your friends wouldn't be esports. When we're talking esports, you're talking the 1% of the 1%. It's the teams, it's the types of players that Carlos was, for example. It's the organizations that like G2 who are putting together top tier teams, right? There's a very small percentage of people who are playing esports at a professional level. And I think that's a really important thing that gets missed a lot when Web3 folks are speaking about the esports space. They sort of just throw in any type of competitive gaming into this esports umbrella. And I don't think that that's totally true. So when you're talking esports specifically, there's a couple of different ways to look at what an effective esport program looks like, right? I think in the most true sense, it's winning tournaments. It's you are the best team in the world. You're the best at your craft. It's whatever you're trying to achieve. But I think there are a couple of other ways that you can be successful in the esports world, and we've seen this with a team like TSM. Born in the League of Legends space, crafted a League of Legends add-on product in Blitz. Their esports program today is effectively a marketing arm for Blitz, which is this platform that you can kind of plug into your Valorant account or to your League of Legends account. It gives you insights. It helps you play the game a little bit more. It counts for like 60% of their total revenue. It's a massive platform. So, for them to have an underperforming team or for them to lose money on their players, I wouldn't necessarily call that a bad esports program, because if the underlying goal is to drive users to Blitz, well, then they're doing an excellent job with that. So I think when you're looking at esports, it's a lot more complex than just this player's making a lot of money, that player's making a lot of money, we'll compete in a tournament. I think that Web3 definitely opens the door for what I think one of the core problems in esports is, which is this misalignment when it comes to incentives, right? In traditional esports, your organizations, your players, and the teams that are making the games all have different incentives to perform. All of those incentives, at some way, shape, or form, compete against another, right? It's a PvP, VP environment. Everybody is sort of trying to take a little bit more from the other person. The game devs want more revenue out of the game. The esports organizations want more revenue out of the esports tournaments that they're playing in, and the players want more revenue and more cash out of the esports organizations. I think what Web3 does is allow for a better aligning of those incentives, right? You can get everybody on the same page through things like royalties and fair and transparent behavior. But I think at the very least, like when you're having a conversation about esports, especially in Web3, you really need to strip it back and understand we're talking about professional athletes. It's the NBA, right? It's not your local pickup league. And I think that that's an important piece that people miss. And it makes the conversation about whether or not Web3 can help esports a little muddy, because nobody really understands what you're talking about.
So, Knock, I want to jump in because you said something that's like super impactful when you talked about TSM's business model around Blitz. And with like the culmination of like UEFN and all these like different platforms, we're starting to see like organizations do this in Fortnite too. Like Dignitas and Booga just released a map called Booga's Endgame, and it did like 1 million players like in the first like week or so alone, which is crazy because everyone knows the amount of revenue that like Fortnite is like creating. But to your point about esports and organizations that are building around esports, does it have to be a thing where the business model eventually it has to go towards the product realm, because just winning tournaments and trying to sell merch to a market that isn't that large isn't sustainable enough? Like, what are your thoughts?
No, I don't think it has to go in that direction. I mean, there are definitely a few organizations who have made plenty of money and are doing well when it comes to just performing, right? I think the Carlos era of G2 is definitely one of these organizations that performed exceptionally well. They were built off the backs of just winning fucking everything. And they made a lot of money because they were a fun team to watch. They had exceptional talent. But beyond that, they had really high quality personalities, right? So it's the type of thing where like you see a professional athlete and he's terrible on camera. What Carlos did well and what a couple of other esports organizations do well is they find this middle ground between really high performing talent and really marketable faces. And I think that becomes really impactful at an esports level. Now, there are very few teams who can perform at that level for any extended period of time, right? You saw it in small spurts with the Astralis teams in CSGO. That team has now slowly started to fall apart. You saw this very early on in CSGO with Ninjas in Pajamas. You see it with the early days of 100 Thieves Call of Duty. I think when you look at different games and different titles in a vacuum, we've seen a number of teams have success with just by winning, right? Just being the best team, being the best personalities. You could absolutely find success if you do that well. Now, it's very rare for a team to do that well across 3 or 4 or 5 titles, which is why I think some teams get in trouble. I would say for most teams, there's probably going to be a path towards some type of product long term, but that's not the only way to be successful in esports now.
I feel where you're coming from. So outside of those big teams, like if you think about it, outside of your Optic Gaming, your TSMs, your 100 Thieves, for most of these esports teams, it does feel like the models could be a bit unsustainable unless they do expand a bit. But I do want to get thoughts from Miss Team Crypto and go to Kyle. And Carlos, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well because you're right here.
Should Carlos go before me?
I don't mind, whatever you guys want.
Yeah, jump on in.
I'll go after him. Go off, Carlos.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure which question to answer, but actually the thing that's stuck in my head is there's different teams that have succeeded in different ways, and there's not one size fits all for esports actually. So when you hear people saying, for example, yeah, the reason esports don't thrive is because they are talent agencies and they overspend in content creators and then they can't monetize it, etc. Well, that's one way to make it, right? And there's a few of them that have done a good job at this. One is Face Clan, because they were the first ones, just doing 360 no scopes and saying dope. And the second ones were 100 Thieves, right? Besides those two, and I guess you can argue Optic Gaming in the era of Face Clan also became a name as a result of that as well, right? But the ones that have done the best job at this has been 100 Thieves because they actually aligned the business accordingly, and it actually worked for them. But there's many other ways, right? Like you can see teams like Fnatic, right? Fnatic only esports, and they're actually, I would say, quite successful, even though I had my competition with them, right, in the past. Cloud9, just like Fnatic, very similar in terms of their business model. They just focus on winning. They focus on closing sponsorships, hopefully sell some merch, get some profits out of that. And those are, for the most part, profitable companies. Then there is the other kinds like TSM, which they use their teams as marketing tools for their tech and for their products, right? Then there is Team Liquid, which is a combination of production agency, sales agency combined with esports team, and they also become profitable as a result. Then there is others, just like in this case G2 Esports. I don't know who else would fall into this category, but we are more a media company than we are an esports team, right? So what we sell is below the line sponsorship deals. We sell inventory in the form of content, and ultimately we scale that with the power of branding, community, and of course every now and then good competitive success coming in, right? But ultimately everything boils down to the ability to create community, and I think that those that have been able to create community the best are going to be, have been, and will continue to be the most successful teams. Whether that is, I think right now is very clear is G2, 100 Thieves, and maybe you can add a couple more in there, but that would be tier 1.5, maybe, not tier 1 really. But yeah, apart from that, I do think that it's a very top-heavy business, and definitely if you're not a top 10 esports organization, you're gonna struggle, yeah.
So I'd love to get your thoughts on this because you do highlight some important, incredible points, I would say, around like the different ways to actually be able to make it from a monetization standpoint. But does the expectation change once you decide you're going to go out and secure VC funding or go public, and now the target is billions or like being this billion valued at $1 billion because VCs, that's always the heralded number. So like how do esports teams, in your opinion, navigate around that process?
Yeah, I suppose, first of all, America is a bubble in and by itself, and a lot of VC money came in and out, and ultimately a lot of that money became dumb money. When you see basketball teams being able to raise $35 million just for the purpose of running their esports initiatives with an esports CEO that is absolutely horrendous at his job, that's when the problem starts, right? And then people start putting shit money into bad places, and then people lose their money, and then people think it's a bad idea. it doesn't help that Bobby Kotick places his incredibly overrated leagues at 20 million price tag when I should be the one getting paid. But that's a different topic. With that said, ultimately, for example, teams like G2, I never took VC money. Why? Because I know VCs want to make money within 5-7 years, and I don't want to have a date in which I have to return the money to investors. No, I want to build a behemoth, right? And for that, I need angels. I need my own money. I need to make sure the business becomes sustainable, and I need to make sure that the business has a long tail. VCs are going to make it very complicated. And then if you're just completely batshit mad in your head, then you make it public, like FaceClan did, especially with those guys at the helm. But
So
other than
Carlo,
that, I think going public is actually not a bad idea if you actually are very good at building community. Actually, it's no different than building a crypto project. It's just making sure that every move you make is going to directly reflect on the chart.
It's funny, Carlos. You're talking, and it reminds me. You know how Ryan Reynolds bought Wrexham from England? He
Yes, yes,
basically
actually.
he did the same thing. He took players, turned them into a media company, made all the players famous on TikTok, built up the team, built community.
Brother, you
They
want to know the
basically
best?
treat it
He
like an
actually had a
esport.
plan, bro. This plan, okay, like I remember speaking with him years ago. I met with him in New York a couple times to speak about one movie he was working on. And actually, he told me about his plans with this. And I was shocked that nobody else did this before. And exactly the plan he had in mind turned out to be exactly the plan that ended up working. So, yeah, there's different ways to get to the promised land. It's just that people, specifically when you hire people from traditional industries, NBA, NFL, whatever it is. And I hire a lot of these people. I had to fire soon after. But the moment you hire these people, the creativity is gone because they are used to get LeBron James and sell jerseys without doing shit. Here you get Faker, which is the most marketable player on the planet, and you still have to make content around Faker, otherwise you will not sell jerseys according to the price of the player, right? So yeah, some players do get paid $5 million, right? But if you compare those $5 million that player is getting in esports versus the $5 million a basketball player is getting paid in basketball, I guarantee you the ROI on each of those dollars will be significantly stronger on esports than it'll be in sports, on traditional sports.
Well, it's also a thing of, in the traditional sports world, you have those big TV deals that literally add the value for the larger audience. So you don't even have to be good. I mean, I can't remember the tight end that used to play for the Denver Broncos in 2008, even though that's my favorite team. You want to know why? Because, yeah, he didn't build that personal brand. He doesn't make content consistently. But I want to throw it over to some hands. Appreciate you so much, Carlos. Miss Teen Crypto, how are you?
I'm great, Brycent. I hope you've been doing well dealing with that jet lag, staying hydrated, keeping up with your self-help. I think that's always
I had a
important on the
hydrating
road.
mask. I am on point.
Oh my gosh, you're doing a mask as you should, Brycent. I'm so happy for you. See, you got to do some self-care. But I think Web3 gaming, I think it's significantly underrated. And I think, the bottom line is we're too early. Last bull market, we were too early. Think about it. What were we doing last bull market? People were just talking about JPEGs on the blockchain. And then we ventured into gaming. And then you had the VCs as well, which also got tied up in a bunch of Chapter 11s. It was like once one Chapter 11 happened, it was a whole chain, and VCs that were investing in these games lost their funding, which also goes to show like the progress a lot of these games wasn't consistent due to that. I think it was also the incentive that was brought up before, where the incentive to play was more financial last bull market, where it was just like, here's a token that's shoved in your face, or pay $1,200 for my NFT, and then you could go and try out the game. It wasn't even free to play. So I think there were barriers to entry. I think it was more financially driven versus the gameplay. However, you can't ignore the underlying technology, which is why I said it's so underrated, where speaking from, like, let's say a younger person's perspective, you're able to actually own something. The ownership factor comes in, where I've spent probably hundreds of dollars when I was younger through iTunes gift cards given to me by my family to buy in-game tokens, in-game assets. Meanwhile, all of them technically went to zero. I can't rent them out like you could in Web3. I can't sell them on a secondary market like I could in Web3, and I can't actually send it to somebody if I wanted to as a gift, like I could in Web3. So I think all of this is really going to be enhanced in the next bull market, or when more funding or more games get developed. I just think we were too early. It doesn't take away from the great aspects of blockchain that I think would financially benefit even the larger corporations as well, through something like royalties, where every market sale on the secondary market, they'll actually get a cut of that. So I think that's important to note as well.
Listen, and I'm going to throw it to some hands. I agree with some of your points, but I got to say, I'm a gamer. I'm patient, but I've been too damn patient. I'm tired of being early. I've gone through Axie. I've gone through post-Axie. I've gone through playing every single game under the sun, being told I was a shill when I wasn't making money, and I watched everyone else making money in the bear market. In the bull market. Then the bear market hit, and I actually started making money, and I became even more of a shill, apparently. And I started doing cooler things. So I'm tired of being early. But you're right. We are still very early. And ultimately, it's going to take a lot more education and transparency. Let's keep going to some of these hands. I think Kyle was next, and then Ryan, and then Hantao.
Yeah, so you guys are hitting on a lot of good points, and what Hantao kind of hinted on was that liquidity problem, where in the past gamers weren't getting paid. I think you look at community gaming, for example, where it's kind of community driven. I think the model is shifting as well and making it more accessible and equitable, in my opinion. It's going to be obviously a long road ahead, but when you see platforms like that where gamers are able to get paid out pretty quickly. Even Moody's just put out a report in the macro saying that blockchain and AI was set to, change the financial industry with adding more liquidity to the market and make it more fluid. So obviously, it's going to affect gaming as well, and payouts, and how smart contracts are integrated in some of these like community-driven platforms. And on the model side, you're seeing DAOs and guilds and things like that are also running their own. They're kind of like quasi gaming orgs. I think it's a better to do like a gaming org setup, in my opinion. And you guys can change my mind on that. But that's what I kind of see in terms of esports. And when I look at successful models, you look at not a lot of people talk about it, but Red Bull, they sponsor like a lot of
Oh,
different
they're OD.
athletes. They have motive.
They're ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know how they managed to go from gaming to football and take a team from the third division in football and have the best F1 team. So I like where you're taking this.
That's facts, man. And obviously, they have the number one driver in the world with F1. They do MotoGP, BMX, cycling. So, is it really a drink company? Is it really like, or is it a lifestyle company? So, what FaZe was trying to do, and, it's not over yet, but I think that's
It
where
might be
you guys
over.
were talking about,
That
like,
token, that phase thing is down to like 26 cents, but I don't know.
yeah, it's down bad. It might go
Did you say Red
OTC.
Bull has the best driver in the world?
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna have a problem. We're gonna have a
You
Hey,
problem.
must
I
be a
don't agree with
Ferrari
that.
We're
I'm
gonna
fan.
still
have a
Lewis
problem
Hamilton.
here. What is this? Mario,
All
you
right, all
must do
right.
your
So.
duties. Send this man to Valhalla.
So sorry, yeah, I had to throw shade, but yeah, like, is it really a product company, right? Or is it a lifestyle? So to me, when I look at Red Bull, it's like a lifestyle. And I think that's where a lot of like esports orgs or gaming orgs could go, is lifestyle. And I think product to me is kind of a no-brainer, especially as you're trying to build like a quote unquote lifestyle brand. Sure, you can win esports tournaments, but community, like Carlos was saying, is going to be really important. And I think in Web3, it's even obviously greater, more important, right? And I'll pass it off.
What do you mean product, man? We already got that here in Web3. There's guild tools and DAO tools and all of this type of stuff already existing. Hantao, what you got for me?
I think Ryan was first.
Ryan, sorry.
Much appreciated, Hantao. And Brycent, very good to see you. Been connected for a long time. I would say +1 to being very tired of being too early. We've been building games, experiences in 3D, the blockchain, going back to about 2019. Wanted to also say that really agree with Kyle on the DAO space. DAO governance has definitely gotten a bit of a bad name over time, but we've had like a roller coaster of different products and experiences going back for like the course of 4 years. And something that's really kept us going is this community of thousands of gamers, NFT holders, the ability for people to make their own content, but also make, in our case, wearables that they can wear in these 3D spaces, and just a robust ecosystem of holders that are aligned with the success of the DAO. Everything goes to a single DAO treasury. When we host things like competitions, historically we've paid out in like a piece of that DAO. We try and find content creators. Definitely not at the scale a lot of you guys are talking about. We're not working with the likes of like FaZe Clan, but try and look for folks who want to grow with us and be paid in that governance token. I think that's a lot more powerful than something just like referral links, for example, which can be a powerful tool. But if you can actually find people who like want to be a part of what you're building early, and I hate to say early again, and then actually want to participate both in the community, making their own items, making their own content, and then they succeed when your gaming DAO succeeds. So I definitely think there's a place still for Web3 gaming developers, both within esports and some of the spaces that we're in. Even if we haven't seen the kind of success that we'd hope for so far. I mean, you mentioned Axie, some of the biggest games in the space currently have a couple thousand users like we do. Maybe the largest has like 10,000 within Web3. Like that is really tiny, but I do think that over the long run, communities that reward their holders with a piece of the project can tilt a lot of the economic problems that people have been describing here on their head, where it creates a flywheel where people want to participate, they want to be a part of this growing thing, and they feel like that by competing and by making content, they're growing their viewership amongst this growing community, and they're growing their piece of the DAO, which ultimately, the profits of this Web3 enterprise are accruing to. So I'm still very bullish, even if the sentiment right now is like right at the bottom. It does feel like 2019 again, but I'll hand it over to Hantao.
Appreciate that take, Ryan. So I wanted to go back to esports real quick. So when esports like started off, everybody had to raise capital because all of the publishers just like fucked everybody, right? Like you had to pay tens of millions of dollars to get a spot, because if you don't, then you lose all your market share and all the shit that you were building for the last couple of years. And like I think one of the biggest issues was actually the competition between teams in terms of talent. There are like licensing deals still, and there are like a lot of media plays that are possible, but because there wasn't so many talent that were necessarily top tier, and all the teams were trying to spend insane amount of capital for them, everybody started getting over evaluated, and they couldn't sustain it with any of their other arms of their business. Like sure, teams built out other aspects like TSM with their tech, and other like Fnatic tried to do hardware with gaming apparel, or not gaming apparel, but like mice, keyboards, whatever. And that shit was like tanking in revenue because people just didn't want that shit, So I think a lot of these esports teams and how they raised funding is very, very similar to Web3, where like people just raise a lot of capital and they don't necessarily know how to find enough revenue sources to really sustain that long term.
I mean, I think that's fucking spot on, to be completely honest. And then it gets to a point where it's like, oh man, I have all this capital and I gotta send it somewhere. I'm just gonna jump in really quick before we keep moving forward. I do want to shuffle people in and off the stage because I think there's some great minds that are sitting in the sidelines when they're requested that want to come up. So if you've spoken and you don't really have like anything else that you want to jump in or say, or don't feel like you're gonna jump back in, you're just kind of like hanging on stage, I might take you down. It's nothing against you, but I do want to get some more takes on here. So I want to throw it over. Can't remember who was next. Hantal, don't worry, I'm keeping you up here.
Go to Jonah. Jonah always has a hot take.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious what's going on in VC world.
Let's do it. What's up, Jonah?
People are afraid of calling me. It's going. Nice to see you at Nike campus. Shoes look cool. Before I was gonna make my take, because I actually wrote what Creator League could have done. Or is this Creator Pass? Is it different than Creator League, or is it the same thing?
I think we're just generally talking about like the whole ecosystem of it. But yes, Creator League, having a conversation about Creator League.
Well, I wrote a solution as to how I think they could have done it and how they still could do it. But I do want to go to Carlos because he mentioned funding and he said that G2, I assume he said G2, unless it's a different thing, didn't take any money. I remember that.
No, I said we didn't take any. We didn't say we take any VC money. There's different
you raised
ways.
17 million. Did that not go from VCs?
Yeah, but VCs, no, VCs are essentially, if the money comes from angels, if the money comes from family offices, if the money comes from internal investors, There's no VC involved. There is no
Got it. Okay.
expectation. Understand?
I know. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, because I saw Joseph Tai. He's definitely not a VC. He's just a operator, and Yu Cheng,
Yeah, so
another operator.
Joseph Tsai, which owns the Brooklyn Nets and is co-founder of Alibaba, a good friend of mine. He is an investor in here, and he is an investor as from his family office. So you can consider that angel investing.
No, yeah. I understand. I mean, they do expect a return, just
Yeah, dude,
probably
I'm thinking, are
not
they trying
7
to go for the
years.
same return though as VCs? You'd think if they're
No, it's
I
like
mean,
family offices
there's
do a
different.
way longer time.
Yeah, no, there's different ways, right? Like somebody like Joseph Tsai, he has generational wealth for as many generations as the Mother Earth exists. So for him, we're probably thinking about a different level of ambition, right? He wants to create something extraordinary. He wants to be part of something that is number one and that carries over his reputation forward and that opens doors that money cannot open. And that's exactly what he gets when he invests in the absolute best asset in the world of competitive video games.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, one, I think it's good for the audience to know the difference in funding because family office, they could wait like 20, 30 years. Like they don't give a shit. As long as they're like really, they're actually a family office and not a pretend one because there are pretend ones. I was going to talk about Creator League in terms of, I think the problem is they were going after a customer base that just doesn't have any money. Like, gamers are relatively poor. They don't okay, like there are different types of gamers, right? There are hobbyists who do make a lot of money, who do want to spend, and they're largely immobile, and some of them in esports too. They do exist because they like the lifestyle idea, right? That's why there was like the idea of funding them. But the kind of gamers that they were attracting were kids who are in their teens. Like most people who follow Mr. Beast are not like in their late 20s or have a job or even in college.
They don't have
So,
disposable income.
I
right,
would
they have
push
no
back against
disposable
that though
income, and
before you keep going though, because if you think about the perspective of they were launching a 200K, I guess, Fortnite tournament with the whole esports thing. They're not trying to get some 30-year-old guy who can't build Fortnite or who's not going to game to jump in and think that he's going to be like the same level as this 15, 16, 14-year-old. It was only $20. Like I don't think we're not comparing it to
only
like
$20 for you and I, but for a kid, $20
right.
they have to go ask their
You could
parents. And
go
actually, we
outside
No,
had
to a
some kids
lemonade
on
stand for
Spaces.
$20. Like $20.
you're thinking about this. You're thinking about this the wrong way, right? Because number one, they do have access to funds through their parents. Number one. Number two, most of the brands, and I can tell you this from a fact. I've closed deals, 8-digit deals a year with brands that are corporations, very well-known corporations that you wear day to day and you use day to day. And for them, the most important thing is to get fans of their brands early on in their lives when they're 14-year-olds, because when they have 18-year-old, then they can drive a car. Which car will they drive? The car they grew up with, right? Which is exactly what happened in the movie Twilight, right? I don't know if you guys remember this, but they had this partnership with, I thought it was Volvo, and Volvo got carried specifically and uniquely as a result of that sponsorship in Twilight, right? And all the kids just wanted to, when they were 18-year-old, they wanted to own a Volvo, right? So, and that just goes hand in hand with exactly their strategy right now with below the line sponsorship deals. So no, I actually do disagree. And also their parents, they do spend a lot of money for them. Additionally, they to play these games, they need consoles, they need computers, they need internet connection, they need the newest phones, they need V-Bucks, they need all of these things, and the parents provide. It's just normal.
$20
I do
is
have
So
such
children
a
Carlos,
low
myself.
amount of money.
can I add?
Like we got to think in the grand scheme. Even for a kid, as a kid, I could go outside and just rake leaves down the street and get $20 to be able to. Maybe
No
they don't
kid
have a
is
car.
raking leaves to go play in the
I mean,
event.
maybe
It's just
not
like
now, but
I know that you guys
we're talking
disagree.
$20. Kids have entire $1,000 Fortnite collections just on their skins alone. They're not hurting to pay $20
Well,
to get into a
most kids
Creator League.
don't. Most kids
In this
don't.
economy, like I don't
Yeah,
think a lot
most
of
kids
kids
don't.
can spend $20. Like
Like I,
I think
I
you
think
guys are
that again
highly
we're
underestimating the amount of money people spend in gaming. $20.
It's a matter of scale. Like you need millions of
100%.
people spending a couple bucks is better than what
That's
we've had
right.
in Web3, which is like 100 people spending $1,000.
That's exact.
I would
Thank
agree
you.
But
with
that's
That's
the
that.
so
point of a
that's
twenty
like the
dollar
perfect point.
creator pass versus we're talking a
But there wasn't a
$300
mass
NFT.
group of people who wanted to do this like that. So my suggestion was going after the people who are already top paid channel members of each creator and going to them directly and providing that service rather than just trying to go for the net of their entire viewership. Because most of the I could probably pull up the data and find out what some of the spending power of these creator
So
fans
if these
are.
creators are already posting about it on their social channels, wouldn't that be going to where their audiences live and exist versus trying to create some obscure
No,
metric
because
from
the channel
where it
members are
exists?
much deeper. These are
So
your
where do you
direct paying
find the channel members
customers.
if it's not on the social media platforms and their pages?
Well, directly on Twitch for one, the ones who are your highest paying subs. Directly on YouTube, your highest paying subs. Your Patreon.
But how do you know they weren't planning
You
on
could probably
conversations
analyze. You could
about
probably
Twitch?
analyze if you're selling merchandise. You could find your highest paying
But
buyers.
how do you know they weren't planning on doing actual things on those Twitch pages with those creators, considering they signed contracts with each creator with a set amount of deliverables, most likely?
Well, that's another problem with the Creator League. That's part of the issue with how it was formed, is that they don't have all those details.
Shona,
I mean,
I
is
have
it
a
that they
different
don't
take. I
have it
mean,
or we
I've
don't
worked with.
have it? Because I think the combination is different. We saw a week's worth of, not even a week's worth of promo go out, maybe a day before one of the creators decided, hey, I wanted to back out. So you can't judge the entirety of what it was going to be if we don't understand what the actual deliverables were for the creators. I don't know what they are, but I highly doubt it was just put out one
They
tweet.
stated what the deliverables were. They stated it in the product. They stated what was going to come with the product and how many events they would attend. So the deliverables were present to the consumer.
Deliverables around what they're doing in the external. But what about the actual part of, hey,
It said you join the Discord, you get access to certain merch. It said the whole thing. It had the deliverables. Now on the back end of how to produce those deliverables, that's not for the consumer to know, but
well,
it
exactly,
presented the deliverables to the top
the
people.
distribution of deliverables probably on the back end had some level of understanding around, hey, we want you to talk about this on your Twitch or your channel where you make the most money, considering that's where the people would be purchasing from. My point is, it's a little bit rash to say, oh, they didn't market where their core audiences and fan bases were just because they only put out one tweet.
Well, I don't think so, because if they did, then they would still be a success today.
No, but that's
And they're
not
not.
true in any
There's a
standpoint.
part that doesn't make sense to me. There's a part that doesn't make sense to me. Look, I worked in branding for years, helped make Corona #1 most valuable beer brand, Airbnb, Dove Real Beauty. They don't match up. Like when you look at Mr. Beast, you like Mr. Beast because everyone feels like they could be Mr. Beast, right? When you look at I Show Speed, you don't feel like he could be I Show Speed. He sells entertainment. He's a jester, right? They don't. When you put them all into one, there's no branding control whatsoever, and their audience is expecting them to continue to deliver why they watch them, and they don't do that when it comes to their brand when they start doing something else. And that, I believe, is the issue because there's no authenticity that goes through, and that's really important to sell products. You
No,
can
I agree.
have
That's why I don't think this should have ever been formed. It's like that's the whole problem. They can't control what these creators do. I'm not like there's a reason why it wasn't successful. Like I want it to be successful, and I suggest that you go like that's why do you think Ludwig is work? Why like Ludwig works because it's the Ludwig event and it's around Ludwig's friends. That's why the gaming world tournament works. You can't have a third party do the whole event and then like it, this is like Hollywood. Everything's so interconnected and networked, and it's all a friend game. And there's a reason why the Ludwig one works and this one doesn't.
I mean, I agree with that. I think that, to your point around the actual creator doing their own thing versus creators being together or coming together to do things is a completely separate thing. But I do think that there is a world where creators come together and do events and they work. So I do think the model could be successful. I think that there's a lot that goes into making it successful that maybe they get right, maybe they don't. But to your point, creators being able to work directly with their
Is that not
fans.
what esports orgs though are, Brycent? I mean, esports orgs in many ways are not just a media brand, but they are an agency. They take in the creator and they do all the events together. So OTK, G2, like what Carlos built. I mean, these are those things. Like a G2 tournament with all the G2 creators would have been more effective than a mix of different groups from different agencies because Carlos knows exactly what his creators are, what they want, how they're going to resonate. That's why it can't work in the way that it did, or tried to. Sorry.
Can I jump in just real quick? I mean, I just want to paint a little bit of additional context here. I sort of hard disagree. To have like, I mean, one, we're talking about Fortnite players, right? 70% of Fortnite players are under the age of 25. Most of those users are spending money. Most of the average spend of a lifetime value user in Fortnite is like $75. Some of the largest single events in Fortnite's history
$75 over how much time, by the way?
It's $75 lifetime. But the point
I
is
know,
this.
so about how many
But
years? 1 year,
Jonah,
2 years, 3 year?
the lifetime. The word lifetime. Like, we can move goalposts, but the point here is
Okay,
that
so
the
2017 times
largest
5.
single events, the largest single events in Fortnite history, outside of the 2019 Fortnite World Cup, were a mix of creator clashes. They were creator events. They were a number of pro-ams. They were a number of variety of different creators who came in. I know, because I was a part of a lot of these events at a very early stage, Fortnite built itself, the entire brand of what that game is, by leveraging different groups of people who seemingly had nothing in common. It was a spectacle. It was crazy to see a guy like Nick Merckx play alongside an NFL player. It was wild when Ninja played alongside, Drake. Like, this was a game that was built on mixing communities. And there's a lot of Fortnite people here in the space who will go to back that. This was something that happened in the early days of Fortnite. Make no mistake, right? We want to ignore it, but it's really difficult to ignore it. The biggest, and I would say the single point of failure for the Creator League was not the concept idea of mixing a bunch of creators together, because stuff like that happens all the time in Minecraft, servers and roleplay servers and GTA. You bring in a
With their
variety
friends
of
directly.
creators. Not necessarily, dude. There's like 100 of these different things that literally make a spectacle out of bringing in different creators from different fields. Like, we can argue, but we can pull up, what has happened here in the space. This is like an objective truth, right? These things have been massively successful in the past. The single point of failure here was some form of miscommunication between CDawg and what eFuse was doing, and the level of involvement of crypto. Once that became a concern, the traditional gamer space views crypto as a plague. And that was the point where everything sort of blew up. Gamers are stupid. They're groupthink. I know, I'm part of the group. I'm one of these people. You think of something as cool as long as other people view it as cool. If other people hate it, you hate it as well. That is the way gamers have worked forever. It's the way that they're going to continue to work in the space. And the reason why Creator League fell apart from the view of just about every traditional Web2 creator, and I know because my DMs have been flooded with people asking me about this, because I know that I work in the crypto space, has been, why did they have to get crypto involved? Crypto is a dirty word. And when that word comes in and there's some form of, oh my God, they tried to sneak it in there, that's when things fall apart. I think when you're looking at the idea of what Creator League was, it's not a novel idea, right? It's a recreation of something that has existed 100 times. You don't get somebody like Mr. Beast and the Night Media team involved with an event if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have things very well planned out. I think that the miss here was that somebody fucked up somewhere along the way in the communication of, this is a crypto-based product, or there's some element of crypto involved in this, and not surfacing that from the very beginning made it feel like this was a Trojan horse moment. Gamers hate that. They hate crypto. They hate feeling like they're going to be tricked. So you combine all of those things together and things fall apart really quickly, right? It has nothing to do with the type of event, at least from my POV, because this is something that has worked in every major game forever. Pro-ams, bringing in different people from different communities, leveraging a number of different creators. This was something that we saw with Among Us. Among Us blew up because creators from different walks of life started to play the game together. This was a crypto communication problem, like, full stop. That is the way that I see it. That's the way that a lot of the traditional Web2 creators are seeing this. I think, honestly, most people in Web3 see it as, you shouldn't have Trojan horsed this in some capacity. And whether it was a Trojan horse with intent from eFuse, or if it is a bold-faced lie from the team of CDawg who's trying to save face because his audience was pissed off that he was involved in some sort of crypto, thing, that's where the issue lies here. I think the idea of bringing people together is not something that gamers are afraid of, and they're not confused about it. They're excited to see people who would never collab on something, at least most of the time.
Let's. I just want to do some very it'll be very quick. Do some quick math. You said you put out some data, so now we can do math to the data. So Fortnite is about 5 years old, I think, right? I think it was 2018, right? So about 5 years old. You said the lifetime value is $75. 75 divided by 5 is 15. That means the average lifetime value of a kid each year on Fortnite is about $15, which is $5 less than the cost of the Creator Pass. And additionally, you're not getting a skin in Fortnite for buying the Creator Pass. Now, if you got a skin for the Creator Pass and they actually did a deal with Epic and it was more integrated, then it would have taken off. No one really would have cared about the crypto because people buy the skins to show off in the game. But just based on math, regardless of what you think of my position, the math would say that this was priced higher than the average Fortnite spender.
I think the
I can
biggest thing that you're
confirm with you
missing
that
is
no
that,
one was worried about the price. Being someone who is
yeah,
tied to Creative League,
Fortnite is new, right?
no one was worried about the $20 associated with it in today's market and today's economy, considering we were, 20 years ago or 15 years ago buying Xbox Live passes for the same $20. Most people were actually happy because they were like, the value of
An
getting a
Xbox Live
Feastable.
Pass gives you a
No,
lot
no,
more
no. They
value.
listen. They were happier because they were like, Feastables actually cost more. A box of Feastables costs more than the $20 to get into the Creator League. So I think that like the monetary aspect has nothing to do with like what maybe went right or went wrong. But I do think that ultimately being transparent and open is probably what kind of at least put it into a position of like question, considering Sea-Dog woke up and with the lack of education, if he's waking up and he's like seeing his community pinging him and they're like, oh man, I can't believe you're doing this. You're going against what you said. If you're not educated, you're not going to stand on your position like Dr. Disrespect did, where he said, hey, I think this is a really innovative technology. It's going to lead to the future of X, Y, and Z. I want to be a part of creating the next wave of this, and this is why I'm going to stand behind it. And if you're a part of my community, you're also going to mess with it. But if you don't, so be it. I'm still going to make my thing, versus someone who doesn't have the education or doesn't feel like they have what they need to be able to stand on it in a way that is like forward facing. So I think a lot of it has to do with like around the transparency, and like the tech isn't the problem. It's always about making sure people feel like they are heard and they understand what's going on. But I do want to keep throwing it around.
I think you just put it to the best. Can you guys hear me? I know I just got pulled in. I've never done this on my PC.
Yo,
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Kind of. You're
All right,
very
cool.
echoey. But...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be. So basically, what I was trying to get at is, I think that whoever was speaking and made the point that the Creator League did not fail because of how much money the pass cost. The Creator League failed because of exactly what he said. As gamers, the word crypto, Web3, all of these key phrases are just ick. And as soon as we feel like somebody was tried to, it's not even the word rug pull doesn't necessarily define it. As a creator, I've had a lot of different brands reach out to me for what seems like normal campaigns and normal activations. And then I find out, like, after I've already signed and I'm going to get my deal done to promote them, that, oh, it's actually Web3 based. I'm not just promoting a clothing line, I'm promoting a clothing line with a digital tag. I think that the big thing that the crypto space needs to do in the gaming space is make sure that you're open and transparent from the start with anyone that you work with. Because as soon as it seems like you're trying to even slightly hide that you're, crypto based, it seems like you're trying to hide something from your consumers and your audience. And the other thing would be exactly what Brycent was saying, is that Dr. Disrespect was able to stand 10 toes down on how he felt about it because he was educated about it. It's not that gamers incessantly are against crypto and crypto deals with their creators. It's that as a creator, I don't necessarily understand everything about it. So even if I don't inherently think that you're doing something wrong or trying to take advantage of my audience, I cannot defend that point as soon as my audience cannibalizes it. There is no defending it in the gaming space. It's a very good point that he brought up. There's something that's going to have to change around the education and the culture around it. It's not that there was inherently an issue with the way that, as gamers, that we saw with the space when it came to the Creator League. It's that the Creator League seems like nobody that's a creator knew what the fuck they were signing up for.
I want to make one quick point. I did not say that price is the only reason Creator League failed, but it's definitely one of them. The biggest one, obviously, was the lying part, but price was not really studied well here. Just if we're comparing just Fortnite. Now, if it's Call of Duty or other things, I have no idea. But based on what Knock is saying on lifetime value data, it was priced at least $5 more than the average person spends a year on Fortnite.
I think that would carry some weight if it was a Fortnite event, right? Like just purely Fortnite from Fortnite users. But like to argue that a Mr. Beast or an iShowSpeed like audience member
Well,
has a
Mr. Beast
lifetime
isn't even
value
in the
of a
league.
combined less than
He's
20.
doing the festivals. He's not even in the
No,
league.
understood. But the point is, like, to argue that this vast number of creators that have millions of followers and pull in millions of views monthly, combined with the fact that a lot of their audience plays Fortnite, you're looking at a total lifetime value of users that's less yearly than $20. I think that that's a little disingenuous.
It's not disingenuous
hold
to
on.
actually assess what happened here. What? Like, yeah,
Okay,
there was
so
many reasons why Creator League failed. It wasn't just because the they said something about crypto. There were many reasons. That was a big one, but it was not the only reason. And also, if you read any of the reporting in journalism, supposedly, I have no idea, that eFuse owed money for a lot of other events. So kind of push this a little further.
Okay, so it's really hard to change somebody's mindset when they're dead set on it. It's the same reason why your parents don't believe in gaming, they don't believe in crypto, they don't believe in the internet or even cell phones. Like once people's opinions are set, it's actually really difficult to change them. You need a lot of education and there's a very high barrier to entry. Now, in terms of the Creator League, like if we think like Carlos is mentioning how these large brands will pay you because they want exposure to these people that are going to grow up and eventually spend, and they want this value accrual to their brand. But this is not the case in Creator League because their Creator League was sponsored by a blockchain, and blockchains have primarily aligned goals of they want more wallets, they want more transactions, they want more people on the chain. And because of that, and as part of what eFuse is doing, they had to integrate people signing up with wallets or whatever. Even if it's abstracted, it's still like a core function of who sponsored this campaign, right? And because of that, that's where things started getting fucked up because there was misalignment between what the sponsor wanted, what the agency eFuse was doing, and what the creators that were playing wanted, right? And like Knock was saying, how Fortnite is a mix of pro-am and like that Drake playing with Ninja was a huge moment for gaming and Fortnite, but all those pro-ams were sponsored by Fortnite. So Fortnite already had alignment in their event in terms of what they wanted from the creators. But because this event was sponsored by a blockchain, they wanted wallets and transactions, and eFuse having to wanting money from this and having to meet those demands, that's where the misalignment and everything came from fucked up, and that's where everything messed up. Outside of just like transparency aspect, obviously, right?
I really think that to the point in where like the stumbling block is, I think we are overthinking this completely. I don't think it had anything to do with money as to where the roadblock came in. I don't think it had anything to do with a misalignment of the creators not like being from the same groups and creator clashes not working. It's literally down to one creator not truly understanding what he was signing up to be a part of and the transparency that may have been missing there. Gamers don't hate blockchain. They hate, again, like was said before, they hate feeling like they're being scammed. They hate feeling like they might be being lied to or a lack of transparency. And ultimately, a creator is not going to break their back for something that makes them feel like it's against their core audience if they don't have the education. So I want to throw it to Shrapnel and then Jink and then Goody, because I know Goody's had his hand up for at least 40 minutes now.
Oh, well, I appreciate you coming to me before Goody. But yeah, I have a take on this as well. And I got a lot of creators on the stage up here with me. But I do think a lot of this, and we've seen this, I liken Web3 gaming to mobile gaming and free-to-play gaming so much because I really do think it is just like the mirror image. And in that same way, you saw creators like yourselves, who I love, by the way, Hantao, Brycent, Jonah, I love you guys. But a big part of your business and the way that you guys attract an audience and make money and be successful and do the things that we love you doing is by catching attention. I mean, honestly, like it's hard to argue that attention was not caught here, right? And so I think, we saw this with free to play. We saw this with mobile. It was a very popular thing 8 to 10 years ago for up and coming streamers who are getting a name for themselves to start shitting all over free to play games, right? Like the death of the $60 40-hour video game was a travesty amongst the gaming community, specifically amongst the influencer community. And then it changed the gaming landscape, right? Path of Exile is one of the most storied and celebrated video games in the market, right? And as people are shitting all over Diablo right now, Path of Exile is just inflecting. And the reason for that is because exactly what you guys are saying. Creators got on board because free-to-play games and mobile games stopped sucking, right? The content started being fun and good to engage with. And I think that's what's happening here, right? Like, I think we're going to see more and more of this type of thing happening where it's like, people get sucked into an idea, there's some clout behind it, it's like, oh, this is crazy, this is great. And then they find out there's this technology that people are kind of weirded out about. And the opportunity there, from a creator standpoint, again, as not a creator, but my perspective, is that the opportunity there isn't to lean into the weird thing and embrace it as part of your brand, but instead to lean into the fact that everyone hates it right now, and you can get some more eyeballs and some more audience by hating it together. And again, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It's just where we are right now. And so we all, as you guys have been saying, have to be extra diligent and extra cautious and extra clear in all of the communication that we're making so that we don't create opportunities for the thing that we love to be the center of the controversy.
I mean, I think that's spot on. Appreciate it. That type of insight. Come on, Gene Karen. I know you've been waiting too. Give me some insights.
Brycent, I'm sorry to do this to Jink. I'm so sorry to do this to Jink, but we do have another show coming up real soon on Mario's channel.
Oh
and
no, my bad.
I
We
know
were
we
rolling
do
out
have
here.
to end up wrapping and holding this off for Monday or for next week. We've had a fantastic show today, and thank you for coming out for hosting the gaming show for the first time, because this really was an awesome time. We're going to be back with this every Friday, guys. Same time, same place, right here.
Jink.
Sorry, Jink. I'm really sorry. Like, the team is in the back channel going, "Hey guys, we got to wrap this up." But we will be back next Friday right here with Brycent hosting again. So gaming space coming every Friday. If any games are interested in sponsoring this space too, feel free to hit up Mario, hit up Brycent, and we'll get the ball rolling with that, because we want to get more exposure to games in the ecosystem. We also have our roundtable show on Monday and Wednesday. So Monday morning, 9:30 a.m. PST on the Roundtable Space show. That will be another great one hosted by BeginBot. And Brycent, if you have any other closing words before we end today's episode.
Let me just say Brycent killed it. He's a great host. Congrats, Brian.
Man, I appreciate all of you coming up. Jonah, Hantal, Nouns, I know we didn't get to you. Knock, Jink, Carlos, Goody, Shrapnel, and everyone who jumped on stage at the beginning, man. I truly appreciate it. Definitely want to do more of these, more topics. I appreciate the spiciness Jonah brings to the stage as well. And, man, let's keep up the momentum, and we'll be back next Friday.